The boxing world didn't just react. It erupted the moment Gervonta Davis went live in what was supposed to be a routine, controlled interview, but within moments spiraled into one of the most intense and controversial scenes fans have witnessed in recent memory, because everything felt normal at first, calm questions, composed answers, until the name Shakur Stevenson entered the conversation and the entire atmosphere shifted instantly, almost like a switch had been flipped, as Davis leaned forward with a sudden surge of energy. His expression tightening, his tone sharpening, and what followed wasn't just a response. It was a direct, unfiltered explosion of emotion that cut through the interview with shocking force, as he delivered a bold and aggressive call-out that didn't sound rehearsed or promotional, but personal, raw, and impossible to ignore, sending immediate shockwaves across the boxing community, especially throughout the United States and the United Kingdom, where fans watching live realized they weren't just witnessing another piece of hype. They were seeing the beginning of something much bigger, a moment where tension, ego, and rivalry collided in real time, turning a simple conversation into a viral flashpoint that instantly dominated headlines, sparked debates, and left everyone asking the same question: had this just crossed the line from promotion into something far more serious? At first, the interview followed a familiar and predictable rhythm, with Gervonta Davis calmly discussing his recent performances, his growing confidence, and his status as one of the most dangerous and explosive fighters in the sport, speaking with the kind of assurance that fans have come to expect. But the moment Shakur Stevenson was mentioned, everything changed instantly, because this wasn't just another name casually brought into the conversation. It was a rivalry that has been quietly building for years, fueled by comparisons, fan debates, stylistic clashes, and a constant question about who truly sits at the top, and that underlying tension was so strong that it didn't need words to be felt, as the energy in the interview shifted almost immediately, becoming heavier, sharper, and far more unpredictable, making it clear that this topic carried a different kind of weight, and what made it even more intense was how quickly the atmosphere transformed, as if both the interviewer and the audience knew they were stepping into dangerous territory, turning what had been a routine discussion into something that felt explosive before a single direct statement was even made, setting the stage for a moment that had the potential to spiral far beyond simple promotion and into something far more personal and unforgettable. When Gervonta Davis finally responded, he didn't just answer, he detonated the moment with a level of raw intensity that instantly separated this from any ordinary interview, delivering his now viral line demanding action instead of talk, making it crystal clear that, in his view, the fight with Shakur Stevenson should already be happening and that any delay was nothing more than unnecessary waiting, and the way he said it wasn't calm or calculated. It was sharp, direct, and loaded with urgency, almost like a challenge that couldn't be ignored, and that single statement hit the boxing world like a shockwave, because within seconds social media exploded with reactions, debates, and divided opinions, as fans across the United States and the United Kingdom dissected every word, every tone, every expression, turning it into a viral flashpoint that spread far beyond the interview itself, and what made it even more powerful was how effortlessly it shifted the narrative, transforming what started as a routine conversation into a headline-dominating moment that suddenly made the potential fight feel more real, more immediate, and far more intense than ever before, leaving fans with the undeniable sense that this wasn't just talk anymore, it was pressure being applied in real time, and the question was no longer if the fight should happen, but how long it could be avoided after a call-out this direct. What made this moment even more impactful wasn't just what Gervonta Davis said. It was how he said it, because the delivery carried a level of raw authenticity that can't be faked or scripted, with his tone sharp and unwavering, his body language tense and forward, and a visible frustration that made it clear this wasn't just promotional talk or a calculated soundbite, but something he genuinely feels, something that's been building beneath the surface for a long time, and as he spoke, it felt less like he was addressing an interviewer and more like he was sending a direct message to Shakur Stevenson himself, which gave the entire moment a sense of urgency and realism that instantly connected with fans, and that authenticity is exactly what caused the clip to spread so quickly across social media, because viewers recognized that this wasn't manufactured hype. It was a fighter openly expressing his desire to prove something at the highest level, not just for attention or headlines, but for legacy, pride, and position in the sport, and that kind of unfiltered emotion is rare, making the moment feel powerful, slightly unpredictable, and impossible to ignore as it turned a single statement into a viral explosion that continued to fuel debate, excitement, and anticipation long after the interview ended. The reaction from fans was instant and sharply divided, turning the moment into an even bigger talking point across the boxing world, as supporters of Gervonta Davis praised him for doing what many fighters avoid. directly calling out a top-level opponent like Shakur Stevenson and pushing for a fight that fans have been demanding for years, seeing his intensity as proof of confidence, ambition, and a genuine willingness to face elite competition, while on the other side, critics questioned whether that level of aggression was necessary, suggesting that the delivery may have crossed from competitive into overly confrontational, and that contrast in reactions didn't calm the situation. It amplified it, because the debate quickly spread across social media platforms, with fans, analysts, and even fighters weighing in, breaking down not just what was said but how it was said, turning a single viral moment into an ongoing discussion that kept gaining momentum. And what made it even more impactful was how this division added layers to the narrative, because instead of a clear consensus, the boxing community found itself split between admiration and skepticism, fueling even more curiosity, more engagement, and more pressure for the fight to actually happen, ultimately proving that sometimes controversy doesn't hurt a moment, it elevates it into something far bigger than anyone initially expected. Shakur Stevenson, known for his calm, composed demeanor, has built a reputation as one of the most technically refined fighters in modern boxing, relying on elite defense, precise timing, and calculated shot selection to control opponents without needing to take unnecessary risks, and that disciplined, almost surgical approach creates a striking contrast with Gervonta Davis, whose explosive power, aggressive instincts, and fight-changing ability make him one of the most dangerous punchers in the sport, capable of ending a fight in a single moment. And what makes this potential matchup so compelling, and honestly a bit unpredictable, is how perfectly these opposing styles collide, because it's not just offense versus defense, it's chaos versus control, patience versus explosiveness, and when two fighters with such sharply different strengths and mentalities are placed on a collision course, it creates a scenario where every second becomes dangerous, every mistake becomes costly, and the outcome feels impossible to predict, turning the fight into far more than just a contest. It becomes a high-stakes battle of philosophies that could define who truly belongs at the top level of the sport. As clips from the interview continued to spread across social media, the conversation quickly evolved beyond the moment itself, with analysts and insiders dissecting not just what Gervonta Davis said, but what it actually means for the future of a potential clash with Shakur Stevenson, because in boxing, moments like this are rarely just emotional outbursts. They often serve as pressure points that help shape negotiations, build hype, and force momentum behind fights that might otherwise stall, and that deeper context added a whole new layer to the situation, making the viral exchange feel less like a spontaneous reaction and more like a turning point, as promoters, networks, and fans began to pay closer attention, recognizing that this kind of public intensity can accelerate discussions and raise the stakes significantly. And what made it even more compelling was how naturally it all unfolded, because whether intentional or not, the impact was undeniable, transforming a single interview moment into a catalyst that could potentially influence the direction of both fighters' careers, while keeping the boxing world locked in, waiting to see if the tension, the hype, and the growing pressure would ultimately lead to the fight everyone now seems to be demanding. The rivalry between Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson hasn't been built overnight. It's been slowly fueled over the years through subtle comments, indirect shots, constant comparisons, and relentless fan debates about who truly holds the edge, creating an undercurrent of tension that has been growing stronger with time. And what makes it so compelling is how much of it has existed without a direct confrontation, living instead in highlight reels, stylistic breakdowns, and endless arguments across the boxing community, where some see Davis's explosive power as the ultimate equalizer capable of ending the fight in a single moment, while others believe Stevenson's elite defense, precision, and ring IQ would neutralize that threat and control the fight from start to finish. And this ongoing clash of opinions has kept the matchup alive in fans' minds long before it ever became a realistic possibility. But now, after this latest exchange, everything feels amplified, because what was once hypothetical has started to feel real, with the tension no longer limited to speculation but beginning to show itself publicly, intensifying the conversation to a level where it's no longer just about who would win, it's about when it might finally happen, and whether the pressure, the hype, and the growing demand from fans will force both sides to turn this long-standing rivalry into an actual showdown that could define an era. One of the key factors that makes this matchup so compelling is the extreme contrast in styles, because when Gervonta Davis steps into the ring, he brings a level of explosive knockout power and aggressive intent that can change a fight in a single second, applying pressure in bursts that force opponents into survival mode, while Shakur Stevenson represents the complete opposite approach, relying on defensive mastery, ring intelligence, and precise control of distance to neutralize threats. before they even fully develop, and what makes this clash so intense and honestly unpredictable is how these strengths directly challenge each other, because Davis doesn't need many opportunities to end a fight, but Stevenson's entire style is built around denying those very opportunities from ever appearing, creating a dangerous and fascinating dynamic where one mistake could be catastrophic, one opening could decide everything, and one perfectly timed moment could completely flip the narrative, turning the fight into a high-stakes chess match played at explosive speed, where patience, timing, power, and precision are all constantly colliding, making it nearly impossible to predict how it unfolds and leaving fans with the undeniable feeling that when these two finally meet, anything could happen and everything will be on the line. As the interview continued, Gervonta Davis made it increasingly clear that he doesn't just believe he has the advantage. He's convinced of it on a level that borders on absolute certainty, emphasizing with calm but unmistakable intensity that his ability to end a fight in a single moment is something no opponent can ever fully prepare for, and the way he spoke about it didn't sound like confidence built on hype, but on experience, on a track record of proving that even when fights appear close or controlled, all it takes is one perfectly timed shot to completely change everything, and that belief has become a defining element of his career, shaping not only how he fights but how he carries himself outside the ring, because there's a dangerous edge to a fighter who knows he doesn't need rounds, momentum, or even control to win, just one opening, one mistake, 1 second. And what made this moment even more intense was how unapologetically he leaned into that identity, reinforcing the idea that against someone like Shakur Stevenson, he doesn't need to outbox him for 12 rounds, he just needs that one opportunity, turning the entire matchup into a high-risk scenario where tension builds with every passing moment, knowing that no matter how controlled or technical the fight may look, it could all end instantly in a flash that nobody sees coming. At the same time, supporters of Shakur Stevenson were just as quick to push back, arguing that his elite skill set, particularly his ability to control distance, minimize damage, and dictate the pace, could be exactly what's needed to neutralize the explosive threat of Gervonta Davis, pointing to past performances where Stevenson made high-level opponents look ineffective and frustrated, and that perspective added yet another layer of unpredictability to the matchup, because it reinforced the idea that power alone may not be enough if it can't find its target. But what made the situation even more compelling was how quickly the conversation expanded beyond the interview itself and into something much bigger, as fans, analysts, and insiders began questioning whether this viral moment could actually push both sides toward real negotiations, turning speculation into possibility, and possibility into pressure, because in boxing, moments like this often act as catalysts that force movement behind the scenes, and now, with attention at its peak and demand growing louder, the question isn't just about who would win anymore. It's whether this surge of hype, tension, and public interest will finally be enough to turn a long-discussed fantasy matchup into a reality that the entire boxing world is waiting to see unfold. Social media didn't just react. It amplified the moment to an entirely different level, transforming what Gervonta Davis said about Shakur Stevenson into a full-scale viral event, as the clip spread rapidly across platforms, being shared, reposted, clipped, and reanalyzed from every possible angle, with fans breaking down not just the words but the tone, the body language, and the underlying meaning. And what made it even more powerful was the speed at which it traveled, because within minutes it had already crossed audiences in the United States and the United Kingdom, dominating timelines, sparking debates, and pulling in even casual fans who might not have been following the situation before, turning a single interview moment into a constant loop of discussion and reaction. And as more influencers, analysts, and fighters began to weigh in, the momentum only grew stronger, creating a cycle where every new opinion fueled more attention, more engagement, and more pressure, ultimately elevating the entire situation. From a simple call-out into a defining viral flashpoint that kept gaining traction and making the potential fight feel bigger, more urgent, and impossible to ignore. The reaction in the United States and the United Kingdom was especially intense, as fans in both regions have been consistently craving high-profile, meaningful matchups, and the exchange between Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson felt like more than just another viral moment. It felt like a genuine step toward something real, because in markets where boxing history is deeply rooted and expectations are high, moments like this carry extra weight, with fans quickly recognizing when a rivalry starts to move beyond speculation and into something that could actually materialize. And what made the reaction even stronger was how authentic and unscripted it all appeared, giving the impression that this wasn't being carefully staged behind the scenes but unfolding naturally. in real time, which only increased excitement, debate, and demand, as audiences across both regions began pushing the narrative forward themselves, turning social media discussions into collective pressure, and reinforcing the idea that this isn't just a fight people are curious about anymore, it's a fight they now expect to happen. As the debate continued to gain momentum, the conversation took on a more complex and almost suspicious edge, with many fans and analysts beginning to question whether what they had just witnessed from Gervonta Davis was a genuine outburst of frustration or a carefully timed piece of strategic promotion aimed at building hype for a potential clash with Shakur Stevenson. And that uncertainty only made the situation more intriguing, because in modern boxing the line between real emotion and calculated marketing has become increasingly blurred, where moments that feel raw and spontaneous can sometimes be part of a bigger plan unfolding behind the scenes. Yet what made this particular situation so difficult to read was how authentic it appeared in the moment, with Davis's tone, body language, and intensity suggesting something deeply personal rather than scripted, while at the same time, the immediate viral impact and the surge in attention it created aligned perfectly with how major fights are often built in today's era, creating a scenario where both possibilities felt equally believable, and that ambiguity didn't weaken the moment. It strengthened it, because it kept fans engaged, debating, and invested, constantly asking whether they had just witnessed real tension spilling over or a perfectly executed move in the long game of fight promotion, ultimately highlighting just how complex and layered the sport has become, where emotion, rivalry, business, and branding are all intertwined in ways that make it nearly impossible to separate what's real from what's strategic. Regardless of whether it was raw emotion or calculated promotion, the impact was undeniable, because the moment instantly elevated the spotlight on both Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson, reigniting a level of discussion and anticipation that had been building quietly for years but never quite exploded like this. And what made it so powerful was how quickly it shifted the narrative from speculation to urgency, as fans, analysts, and even figures within the boxing world began treating the potential matchup less like a what-if and more like a fight that now needs to happen, creating a surge of pressure that extended beyond social media into the business side of the sport, where attention, demand, and timing play a crucial role in making fights a reality. And in that sense, the moment didn't just go viral. It changed the conversation, amplifying interest, raising expectations, and forcing both fighters further into the spotlight in a way that made the idea of a showdown feel bigger, closer, and far more inevitable than it ever had before. The possibility of a showdown between Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson has been circulating for years, living in constant debate, fantasy matchups, and stylistic breakdowns, but moments like this don't just keep the conversation alive, they push it forward with real force, because when a viral exchange captures global attention and ignites such intense discussion, it creates something far more powerful than speculation. Demand, and in modern boxing, demand translates directly into pressure, especially on promoters, networks, and decision-makers who ultimately control whether a fight gets made or not. And what makes this situation feel different is how quickly that pressure has built, fueled by fan reactions, analyst breakdowns, and the undeniable energy surrounding the rivalry, turning what once felt like a distant possibility into something that now feels within reach, because the more the public talks about it, the harder it becomes to ignore, and the higher the expectations rise, creating a scenario where delaying the fight could risk losing momentum, while making it could capitalize on one of the most talked about matchups in the sport, ultimately showing how a single moment, when amplified at the right time, can shift the entire trajectory of a potential fight and bring it closer to reality than ever before.